What's up guys, and welcome back once again to Chris Aquariums. This week we're going to talk about Betta Fish. As you guys might know and might have seen, my very first fish in the aquarium hobby was a Betta Fish or a Siamese Fighting Fish. And as you can see by those photos, I fell into the trap of believing that the tank that they were sold in is the size tank that they could live in. And so you take them home and you think, alright, this is an adequate size habitat. However, that's not always the case. So what we're going to talk about today is what tank size is right for a Betta Fish. So to start off, let's start with what the fish store will tell you. I was at my local fish store the other day and I saw a rack of Betta Fish. On that rack they had a little sign, and this is what the sign would have to say. If you want, pause the video. As you can see, they give a couple of explanations as to why a smaller tank will work for a Betta Fish. But what we need to keep in mind is that what the aquarium store wants to sell you and what's best for the fish are two very different things. Also, the science and the behavior and to provide your fish with a healthy life are also very different things. They give a couple of reasons. What they say is that the Betta Fish that are bred for the aquarium trade are smaller and less active than they would need to be in the wild, so they only need a smaller body of water. Their reasoning behind this is that because they're smaller fish and they don't have to swim around to hunt, they get food dropped in for them, they don't need a lot of space. Also, it seems quite convenient that because they're a fish that fight with each other and they have to have their own individual tank, that they provide them with very small tanks to sell in. All the other aquarium fish you can add together in a big tank, but because these have to be kept separate, I find it a little bit convenient that the tanks that they're kept in is very small and very efficient to sell. Next, let's talk about what the fish store attendant might tell you. They might also say that this fish will be perfectly fine in a small enclosure. Perhaps it's quicker, easier, cheaper for them to sell you a small tank. Perhaps you'd be more inclined to make the purchase. Perhaps it's easier for them to make more money. Not everybody's like that. There are some good fish stores, but that also could be a contributing factor towards the push towards a smaller tank. So that's what the store is going to tell you. And maybe that's more of a commercial aspect. But let's talk about the science and biology for a moment. In the wild, the Betta Fish or the Siamese Fighting Fish historically lives in small bodies of water, such as the rice paddies of Thailand or small puddles in tropical areas. Now, the reason why people say that a small tank will work for a Betta Fish is because in its natural habitat, it does live in small bodies of water, and occasionally those bodies of water will be subject to drought or long periods without rain. And because of that, the size of the water volume that it's living in will shrink as evaporation happens and no additional water is added, meaning that it's living in a small puddle. Now, because of this environmental trait, the Betta Fish or Siamese Fighting Fish has an organ that not a lot of fish have, and that's called a labyrinth organ, and it allows the fish to breathe oxygen from the atmosphere rather than just the water, and that's very important. The reason why that's important is because most fish derive their oxygen from the water that they live in. So when you have a bigger tank, you have a bigger volume of water, you also have a larger surface area for a gaseous exchange to occur, meaning more oxygen can get into the water. So when you have a fish in a larger body of water, there's more oxygen to be consumed and a higher amount of gaseous exchange for the oxygen to be replenished. With the Betta Fish, obviously you have a very small container, small amounts of oxygen in the water, small amount of additional oxygen coming in, which is why the labyrinth organ allows it to breathe oxygen through the air. Now, a lot of people say that's why they can have a small tank, because they can breathe oxygen through the atmosphere, not just the water. And yes, you can keep a Betta Fish or a Siamese Fighting Fish in a small body of water and it will live a relatively long life. But what you have to take into consideration is the quality of life and how that fish is going to behave in its habitat. This is especially so when it comes to breeding behavior. A betta fish is a member of the gourami family, meaning that it has a labyrinth organ and it also spawns in bubble nests on top of the water. In its natural habitat, it'll have plants and other items like driftwood that it can attach the eggs to, which it can't do in a small tub aquarium. But let's talk about the health of the fish. Hopefully that's one of the most important things. If a betta fish is in a small cup, it only has a certain range of motion. A lot of times it can only turn around in the water column, and a lot of times that means it'll swim in one direction and it can develop back problems. In a large body of water, a betta fish will be able to swim around up and down through the plants and through items in the tank, giving it a better quality of life, more exercise, and a healthier fish. Surprisingly enough, the area of the world that you live in also has an effect on the size of the body of water that a betta fish can live in. The reason why is because a betta fish is a tropical fish, meaning it needs water temperatures in the tropical range. Should you live in an area that's not tropical, which a large portion of the world does, your betta fish will need a heater. The smaller the body of water that the betta fish is in, the larger the fluctuations between time of day and between the seasons in the year. Now, if you live somewhere, once again, that's not a tropical climate, during the winter you will need a heater. And a small cup of water is not big enough to keep a heater so that you can keep your betta fish at the proper temperature. Last but not least, let's talk about the name of the fish, Siamese Fighting Fish. By definition, these fish will fight with each other if put in the same tank, especially males. Now, males can be put in a tank with females, however you need at least a 20-gallon tank to ensure that they don't fight, and a certain number of females to distribute the aggression and the territorial behavior. Should you keep what's called a sorority of bettas, which is a male and a few females, there will also be breeding and spawning behavior. Obviously, a larger body of water with plants, perhaps some driftwood, would be a much better habitat for the fish and for the sorority and breeding behavior. So let's break it down. Can a betta fish survive in a small body of water? Yes, it can. Should the betta fish live in a small body of water? Sometimes that's up for interpretation. What is the best tank size to accommodate the lifestyle of the fish? Some fish stores will say it's a minimum of 1 liter. I would like to think it's a bit more, but the bottom line is the biggest habitat that you can give your betta fish will allow it to have a better quality of life. It'll allow it to exercise more and interact more with the habitat that you provided for it. So yes, a betta fish can live in a small body of water. It is okay for the pet stores to house them in those small containers. However, if you care about your betta fish and the quality of life that it'll have under your care, my recommendation is to try and get as big of a tank as possible, kept at the right temperature and with the right kind of environment for it to interact with. So whether you've owned a betta fish in the past, whether you currently have one, or whether you're looking to get one, I hope that you found this video informative as to what size of tank you should get for it for the best lifestyle for your fish. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and I hope that I'll see you once again, as always, on Chris Aquariums.